Alright, Knights of Apollo, what's up guys? It's Apollo here, and welcome to my tabletop Total War game, or the board game Total War game. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. It's essentially a board game that mixes in Total War battles. So, I had this idea after watching, so in the War of Rights community, they have a grand campaign, that's what they call it, because the issue in the War of Rights community is sometimes we get a little bored like playing a battle that means nothing. So they had the idea of setting up a campaign where you like march troops around, you engage the enemy, and you're fighting for territory, you're fighting for resources, whatever, and then you go on War of Rights to play the battle, and then whatever happens in that battle will decide what happens in this campaign. So essentially, I'm doing that with Total War. Now, the reason I wanted to do that is because I love mostly for Total War online battles. I love online battles. I find fighting the AI is really boring. They're not very good. I don't really care, like for in campaigns, I don't really care about managing cities and public order. I just want to focus on only the military aspects of the game. So as in army movement, army management, actually fighting the battles, timing and when you attack cities and how you move troops and you're deceptive and stuff. So I just wanted to make a game that focused on mechanics like that, instead of, having to deal with cities and everything like that. So it's all military focus, which I'm really excited about. Now, if I could make my own video game, that's how I would do it, because that's the thing about Total War, and what really kills it for me, it's a grind. For example, Thrones of Britannia, that was a time period where there wasn't a lot of manpower. The armies weren't massive. And when you did have an army and you lost it, you basically lost the war. It's over. Like, look at Hastings there. The Anglo-English lost, and they pretty much, that was it. William the Conqueror was king of England. So that's kind of what I'm representing here too, a little bit, where it's like, when battles happen, it's a big deal. It's not just like, oh, here's another battle. Because in Total War, you have a battle, you crush the enemy. Oh, here comes another army. Oh, here comes another army. Oh, here's another army. It's just a big grind, and you don't feel that winning battles are as important or like effective. Because that's, and to give Total War credit, it's because it's really hard to design smart AI and that's how they kind of grind you down, is just throwing a ton of troops at you. So hopefully one day we'll get a really intelligent AI that's challenging to face, but it is what it is. So this was my idea to kind of do that. Also, another thing is that in campaigns, you can only have 2 people in Total War campaigns, and in this you can have technically unlimited. It's up to you. These are your rules, and Tabletop Simulator, which is the game I'm using here, is perfect for it. I mean, it's perfect. You can load in your own board, you can come up with your own rules, which is basically what we did here. So I'm really excited about this, and I think it would be really cool, and it would be really awesome for Total War to have a game like this. So you remember Medieval 2, how you could play hot seat campaigns, where basically hot seat campaigns, you could have as many players as there are factions. And what happens is that it's just like playing Total War. It's just like playing normal campaign is what I meant to say. You play your campaign part, and then you save it, and then you send it to the next person whose turn it is, and then they play their campaign. The only problem with that is that you can't fight the battles because it won't be fair. Like if you had a really awesome army, and then on another player's turn, they attack it. Well, they're fighting AI. That's not fair, right? So you kind of had to auto-resolve the battles. And auto-resolving battles is lame. So I wish Total War had a system where it's a hot seat and you take turns doing your turn, but when battles happen, the game saves the setup, the army setup, everything, like the experience of the troops, how healthy the troops are, and you can load those settings into a multiplayer battle, play the battle, and then save the outcome and put it into the hot seat. I think that would be really awesome, and that's basically kind of what I'm doing here. you know, not exactly, but you get what I'm saying. So what I'm going to do with this too is I'm going to stream it on my channel, and then I'm going to upload it kind of like edited down and kind of going over like the major moves and the major battles and whatnot. So it'll be like a series. It'll be really fun. I'm excited about this. I've been working on this with my 13th Georgia guys, which of course is my War of Rights regiment guys. Honestly, guys, I'm in there all the time hanging out with them, working on this because I'm so excited. And they are very excited as well. They're putting in a lot of work. So I want to give them a huge shout out for helping me out and coming up with rules. They're currently making cards. So we're going to have some like cards in the game that will you know, throw in some different elements like bad weather or, you know, just stuff like that, just to make it have a little bit more randomness to it and more fun and some bad luck, you know, because there's a little bit of that in warfare, sure enough. But yeah, very cool. So what I'm going to do is go over the basic rules. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to confuse you guys. I just want to give you enough rules where you understand what's going on. So when you're watching the stream, you know what's happening. And if it's like a very minor rule that, you know, is a little bit more complex, you can just kind of learn about it as we stream and explain it on the stream. Also, all of the players are set, so I am not taking in any players. It's all reserved by 13 Georgia guys who helped design the game. Maybe I can do this in the future with other Total Wars. So like, I mean, seriously, you could do this for any game. I mean, you could do it for Company of Heroes. You could do a World War II, Company of Heroes. You could do Star Wars and do like Empire at War, that RTS game. Like, it literally, the sky's the limit with this tabletop stuff. Any kind of campaigns, it would be awesome. It would be cool. So let's jump into, obviously, this is the American Civil War. We're using the American Civil War mod for Napoleon. They had a map in the game called Battle Cry. We just loaded in this map and we're using it with our own rules, so that's very cool. So here's the objective of the game. Now, there's an Eastern theater and there's a Western theater. So you got the two theaters. Technically, there's 3 theaters in the Civil War, but there's 2 in this one. To win, say, for CSA to win, or really any side to win, you have to take their main victory point city on both sides. So, for example, if you're CSA, you have to take Washington, D.C., and we'll just say Springfield. We're not quite sure what city is going to be the victory city on the West. So that's how you win. You control both those cities. On the Union side, you have to take Richmond and you have to take, I believe, New Orleans. And that's how you win from the Union side. So that's the main goal, the main objective. Now, in each theater, there's going to be a total. So overall, in this game, there's going to be 12 players. You're going to have 6 players on the East and 6 players on the West. And the way it works is that you'll have 3 armies on each Western and Eastern for both sides. So a total of 6 armies. In each army, there is 3 corps. You have First Corps, Second Corps, and Third Corps. Now, thankfully, in the ACW mod, you can pick from 3 corps for both Union and CSA. So what we decided to do is that we're going to assign a player a corps. So let me just walk you, because this is a little confusing. Let me walk you through this. This is for army organization. Let's say this is my army right here. I'm not sure if I'm going Union or CSA. We still have to figure that out. But just for this example, I have a CSA army. This is my army. I'm also First Corps General. So what that means is that the biggest corps in my army is going to be First Corps. So we've decided that the corps that the player is in their army will be the biggest corps. So you can bring a total of 20 troops. The other corps, so Second and Third Corps, will be a little smaller. So it's going to be like 15 troops. So what happens, let's say, for example, my army marches up this way. I want to defend Knoxville over here, and Union wants to take it, but I'm going to meet them out in the field and show them what for. What's going to happen is that when we play this battle, the 3 Eastern generals, or the 2 other ones, not, the 3 including me, are going to fight in the battle against the 3 Union on the Eastern side. If you get what I'm saying, the 3 Union Eastern players. Now, when we fight this, I control First Corps. And I call the shots, as in, because this is my army, I tell my fellow CSA generals what they need to do during the battle. And they will control the smaller corps. And they will control the corps they're assigned to. So like I said, if I'm First Corps, and let's say the player over here is Second Corps, then this army, the Second Corps, will be the biggest. And if this army goes into combat, then the commander of Second Corps is calling the shots. Do you guys get what I'm saying? I hope it's a little confusing, and I'm very poor. I'm very poor. I'm very bad at explaining complex things. It's like I get it in my head, but when I try to tell someone, it's not exactly clear. But basically, this system is so that every time there's a battle, all players are involved. All players will be able to participate, because obviously you don't want like a battle to happen. It's like, all right, well, we got to wait for them to play. And the the ACW battles are very long, so they'd just be sitting there doing nothing. So this is a way to include all Eastern Union and CSA players to participate in the battles. Again, if you're confused, don't be afraid to leave a comment, or if you understand, you can help those people who are confused. But basically, you're assigned to a corps, you lead that corps in every battle. Same thing on the West. So there's going to be an Eastern First Corps, there's going to be a Western First Corps, an Eastern Second, Western Second, so on and so on. So that's how that works in terms of army comp buildup. So the way the turns are going to work. So basically how I learn to play board games is that I just play them and I learn as I go. Because I'm a very visual learner. I can't just read directions and be like, oh, okay, that's what that means. You know, I got to like actually physically do it and understand it. I'm a slow learner. I'm not going to lie. So this is how it's going to work. At the very start of the campaign, both sides will roll a die to see who goes first. So let's say Union rolls first. They rolled a 5. CSA rolls first. They roll a 2. So Union goes first for this turn, and I'll explain turns because they're a little different from your typical board game. The way it's going to work is that it's going to go from left to right. So Union will go, say we'll just, we'll move him here, and we're going to move him to capture St. Louis, and we're going to move him here, and he's going to use the railroad and move a little further. We'll get to that later. He's going to push up and push here, and then you are going to push up to defend Washington, D.C. So you can't move that far, but just giving you an example. I'll explain movement very soon. So now all of the Union went. Then the CSA go from left to right. And when they go, it's considered a phase, but not a turn. And the reason we're doing this is because we want a turn will be considered a turn when there's been 2 battles in both theaters. And again, the reason we're doing this is that everyone is playing a battle at the same time. So, for example, let's say Union gets aggressive. They push up. CSA is like, oh, nah, we're taking Missouri, baby. And they are locked and engaged in a battle. That means the Western players, they wait. Okay? They wait. They don't make any moves. The Eastern players keep going. So that's why it's like it's not a turn, it's a phase. So phases are going, and they keep going. Say it takes them like 100 phases to get into combat, and then finally these 2 armies meet. Boom! Now they're locked into a battle. So now West and East both have their battles. They both play their battles, and when they're done, that's a turn right there. That is a turn. So it's a way to make sure both sides have a battle and they're not like waiting for the other side or anything like that. It's not a perfect system or anything, but I think it works pretty well. And again, a lot of these mechanics are inspired by the grand campaign of the War Rights community. Again, I want to give them a big shout out because I did pretty much steal some of their mechanics because they're so good and they work and it makes sense. So that's how it's going to work. Now, when the turn ends, you do the roll again. So Union will roll. They roll the 4. CSA will roll. And CSA rolls a 5. So now CSA goes first. left to right, and then Union goes first, or second, left to right, if you get what I'm saying. And they keep going until they get engaged into another battle. So that's how it works, essentially, of like how the battles work. So I hope I haven't lost you guys. And again, if you're confused, don't be afraid to ask a question. I'll try to answer as many as possible. So let's go ahead and move on to these cool little blocks here. So these are cities, okay? Now the cities are important because, one, they're very defensive. So if you need to fall back, you can hold here. You're going to be a much harder army to take on, because what we decided to do is pick defensive maps in the game. And also you will have potentially a garrison in the city that will give you some additional troops in the battle. So the cities are important also because they produce a currency. And that currency you use to replenish and recruit new troops. So for example, the capital cities produce 3 points, and the minor cities produce 2 points. And then, you know, at the end of a turn, you then hand out those points, and the armies will then, you know, use those points, that currency, to buy new troops. So hopefully that's easily understood. So basically, you want to take cities because cities will eventually give you more points. So for example, and we have some neutral states here. So the cities are neutral. And the way to capture them is by sitting on them for 3 phases. I think we're going to stick with that. Some of the rules may change here. I want to make that clear. Some of the rules may change, but I'm giving you the very like broad general rules. So, yeah, if you sit on here for 3 turns or 3 phases, then it turns blue. So we'll just go over here. We'll go to the blue, and boom. There you go. Blue, right? So it's now a Union city, and they control Missouri. So let's say that CSA wants to go up and attacks it. They defeat the Union. We'll get to falling back in a second. And so what's going to happen now is they're going to sit on this, and the block is going to turn back to white. So that means they've neutralized it, and they're going to have to sit on it for 3 turns. And when they do, it's going to turn red. And now that city is producing extra currency for the CSA. So if you take more cities than the enemy, then you are going to have more money, which you can spend on your armies. So taking these cities are going to be very, very important. So the other thing that we added to the game, we were a little concerned about the game being too much around siege battles and not enough pitch battles. I'm going to show you, okay, can we turn this back? Here we go. There we go. I'm going to show you what we've kind of done to make sure there is a lot of pitch battles instead of just like siege focus battles. So right here, you see these little chips right here? These represent like points of interest, okay? And also we have a couple of these on like famous battles, you know, like we'll probably have one on Gettysburg, you know, stuff like that. Now, let me make this clear. The cities and these little chips, these aren't set in stone. These will probably move around when we officially start. I'm just displaying them to explain the mechanics here. So when you start the game, all these chips will be white. So they'll be white. That means it's not doing anything for you. Let's say that this is my army here in Atlanta. And I'm like, okay, well, the first thing I want to do on my turn is move to this chip right here. And it's kind of representing you building up infrastructure. You know, it's you going to the city and building better roads, railroads, whatever. You're building it up. So now this city is going to help you. So after 3 phases, you can now turn it red. And that means, boom, this represents that this chip right here is producing extra currency for you. So cities will give you like 2. These little chips will give you 1 once you've captured them or built up the infrastructure for them. So, yeah, that's how those work. So it is going to be really important to push out and try to take the enemies of those. So let's say, you know, this army is pushing over here, and this army is wanting to defend this chip. That's going to be a pitch battle. And that's pretty cool, right? I think that's a pretty cool mechanic. Now, there's more to it as well. To take a state, right, to completely conquer a state, you have to, 1, take the city and take the chip, or this little like point of interest. Once you control both, you now technically earn the whole city. Now, why is that important? Well, one, you're producing a lot of money from the state you just took, right? You're producing 2 more from the city, 1 more from this point of interest. But by taking a state, you get a bonus card. So we're going to have these cards over here, right? And for example, let's say the Union comes down to Georgia, like they did. They take Atlanta, so we'll turn this blue just so you can visually see it. And then Sherman marches his way to Savannah, and let's say there's a chip on Savannah, which there will be, and they take the chip as well. Remember, you got to neutralize it first, sit on it for 3 phases, and now it's captured. So that way it gives time for, CSA armies to march and defend it before they capture it. Well, now Georgia has been conquered, and it's now a Union state. Once the Union have conquered a state, they will then earn a conquered state card, which basically are all good cards that give you some really good bonuses. For well, the cards are we're still working on them. I just have these little playing cards. But you pull a card, you flip it over, and you earn the card. The card could be, replenish all wounded troops, or gain 10 artillery. It's still a work in progress, but basically it gives you some nice bonuses. It's kind of representing like high morale, like, whoa, we just took a state. This war's going well. Let me sign up and join the firing line. Stuff like that. So that's what those cards are going to do. Okay, that's not where I wanted you. Come here. Okay. What the heck? No. I don't want this. There we go. I think we have to move these over a little bit. There we go. Yeah, see, it's like, no. Get over here. So we'll have to reorganize this board here a little bit. So that's how that works. So that's why it's really important to not only push for cities, but also these little tokens. And seriously, guys, I mean, the tokens may not produce as much currency for you as the cities, but taking them, focusing on and taking, like, building up your infrastructure on yours and then taking the enemies, like, you're going to build up a lot of currency even if you don't take the city. It's just to force players to not sit on their cities and move out and kind of attack and whatnot. So that's how the cities work. That's how the little chips, the point of interest, work. And that's kind of how the currency works. Well, we didn't talk about how you buy troops and everything, but we'll get to that soon. Another thing we have here is seasons. There's going to be seasons in the game. So each turn is 1 month. So let's just say it's December. December's technically fall. And each, excuse me, there are some like bonuses and negatives to each season. For example, you have obviously when winter starts, it's January. February is going to be like the dead of winter months. So what that means is that during January and February, nobody can really fight. So what's going to happen here is that, let's say the CSA's army ready to move in against this army in Indiana. Well, then January hits and everybody's forced to go to the nearest city and sit there. And this kind of gives you a phase to kind of, spend some currency, replenish some troops, recruit new troops. It's giving it a little bit of like time to recuperate, to regroup. And again, this is a mechanic from the Grand Campaign of War of Rights, so I like it. I think it's a cool idea to just give players a break. And then as soon as spring hits, which we'll say is March, or March is still technically winter, isn't it? Or like some of March, but it doesn't matter. It's spring for us, and at that point we can move out and start fighting again. Now there's also going to be another deck of cards when you play. Now you pull these cards. Again, this is a mechanic from the War of Rights campaign. I want to make sure I keep giving them shout outs because a lot of their ideas were influenced, I guess. It's a nice way of saying stolen. But basically, every time we play, every game session, each player will pull a card from this deck. This is like neutral cards. There's good, there's bad, there's really good, and then there's really bad. And what happens, so let's say, for example, let me just think of one of the cards here. Let's say we pull a card, and it's a good card, right? The card says, after winning a pitch battle, gain +1 movement. Okay, so you will then, the player will hold on to that card until they meet the conditions. So they'll hold it for as long as it takes. So let's say they have this card, right? And then they don't ever win a pitch battle for that day. Doesn't matter. The next time we'll play, he'll still have it, but he'll also need to pull another card, right? And he'll have to pull another card, and it'll say it's a negative, and it'll be like, if you lose a siege battle, 2 units abandon the army. So he's going to have to then put it there. And again, you don't have to play the card until you meet the condition. So, you know, that's how that's going to work. And then once you do meet the condition, you discard the card. If you guys understand what I'm saying. So, yeah, it'll be pretty cool. It adds those elements of like, you know, maybe this army will weaken an army severely. You know, it makes it a little bit more interesting and have a little bit of RNG thrown in there. There will also be cards that will take matter or will like come into effect during certain seasons. So like during summer, you could say like, I think one's called like, I don't care if you're tired, march. And it basically affects your movement because you're like forcing your men to move and they're tired. It's only making it worse or something, you know. So when summer comes around, that card you will have to use, and your army will only be able to will move 1 less space than what everybody else's army's moving until summer is over. Once summer's over, then you discard it and you move on. So it's pretty cool. I really like it. It adds the seasons, and we'll have it's not on the board yet, but we'll have a system where we easily track what month it is and everything like that. So very cool stuff. I'm excited about that. So let's talk about the troop management and how you recruit troops and everything like that. So we're not exactly 100% sure how we're initially going to build the army. I believe the way we're going to do it is that for your entire army, not entire corps, but for your entire army, you are allowed to recruit 8 elite troops, 6 artillery, and the rest will have to be volunteers. And everybody will kind of have the same build up to that. So on the Union side, same thing, 8 elites, 6 artillery, the rest being militia and volunteers. But once the game gets started, then you can start building the armies a little differently. You can start adding cav, you can start adding artillery. So let's talk about replenishment and recruitment. So, and I'm also going to walk you through how we're going to do casualties, which is this right here, because the issue we had here, now we're trying to make the rules as simple as possible, but also still have a bit of complexity to make it strategic and, you know, immersive in certain ways. So the way we're going to do it, let's say, here, let's move you out of Atlanta. Let's say you're on Atlanta and the CSA is like, oh, hell nah, you know, you're not going to take Atlanta. So they move up and they're going to take it back. They fight an epic battle of grand scale, you know, and the CSA unfortunately get pushed back, right? Now we're a little torn, the community in terms of rule making, we're a little torn. There's two, and maybe you guys can help us here, but there's two train of thoughts here, two thought processes. One is that when you lose a battle, you instantly have to go all the way to the nearest city. So that would either be, you know, what is this, Orlando? Yeah, so it probably Montgomery. So if CSA loses, they instantly go to Montgomery, and it kind of gives them time to like lick their wounds and regroup. The other thought process is like you just like fall back 4 spaces. That way the Union can catch up to you and cut you off before you reach a city. You know, it gives them an opportunity to cut off a wounded army. So I like the one where it's just like you automatically go to the city because it makes it really simple, but it also doesn't make it, you know, very like open, I guess. It makes it's simple, but you miss out on tactical, you know, strategies. There is another element to it though as well. So let's say, for example, a Union is like right here, like 1 block away from Montgomery, and this CSA army attacks. Well, if they lose, they have to go to the nearest city, And if a Union army's nearby, they have an opportunity to intercept them. So they have an opportunity to cut them off. So now they're forced to be engaged with this army. So there's a little bit of strategy to that. So we're still, not sure, but one or the other, it will still be cool. It'll still be good to go. So anyways, as I was saying about troop management and battles, CSA fights for Atlanta. They lose. They get pushed back. And this is how we're going to calculate casualties. Because originally we thought we were just going to, as much as I would love to, and as much as it would be really cool, it's just not convenient enough. We were going to basically take a screenshot of the casualties of every unit, of every single unit. And if a unit loses like 60% or maybe even 50%, or I think we were going to go with 60, it doesn't matter because we're not doing it. But if a unit takes 60% losses, then they are considered wounded and you have to replenish them. So you have to replenish them before you can use them again. And if a unit loses like 75% of their strength, then they completely shatter and you're going to have to recruit a new unit to get them back in your army. And replenishing troops is cheaper than recruiting troops. So you definitely want to keep your units alive. So we wanted to do that, but I was like, you know what? That's just way too complicated because we're going to have to be looking at everybody's army comp and the results and going through it and calculating the percentages. And it just wouldn't, it's just unfortunately too much. That's why I said I wish Total War had a built-in system that could keep track of it. So instead, what we're going to do is that we're going to calculate overall casualties. So let's say this defeated CSA army loses 60% of their men. And what we're going to do is that you will roll 2 die per 10%. So you will roll, let me get these special ones out of here. I'll explain these soon. You will roll, if you lose 60%, you will roll 12 of the traditional die. Okay? Now, the way it's going to work is that the defeated army, so let's just say we roll. The defeated army, this is what happens with their rolls. If you roll a 1 or 2, that means the unit is completely destroyed and has deserted your army. So let's see. Let's count this up really quick. Is there any 2s? Nope. So that means you lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you get to go through your army and pick 5 units you want to remove from your army. So they lost 5 units there essentially. Now if it's 3 or 4, that means that unit needs to be replenished. So looking at this, we got a 4 here. We have a 3. And we have another 3. So that means 3 of the units need to be replenished. And needing to be replenished means that if, say, CSA or the Union goes after him again before he can replenish, that means he can't use these units. They're like, think of them sitting in the back in like wounded medical tents, like they have to replenish their troops before they can use them again. But these, these troops that they completely lost, there's no opportunity to replenish. If you want to get 4 units back or 5 units back, you have to recruit new ones, which again will cost you more currency, more gold, whatever you want to call it. And then if it's 5 or 6, you do nothing. These are safe, right? So again, 1 or 2, they are completely out of the army. You lose them. 3 and 4, they're replenished, and you have to replenish them. And we're going to have a document that everybody has access to so we can keep up like what units are gone now, what units need to be replenished. It's going to be a little complicated, but it's not nearly as complicated as going to each individual unit and calculating percentages. Now we also have these special die over here because the issue of this is that, say, if you lose 5 guys, you're going to pick the cheapest guys. You're going to pick the weakest guys, militia, volunteers. You're never going to pick your elite infantry. You're never going to pick your artillery, which it kind of makes sense, right? Your elites would have better morale because they're hard veteran soldiers. It would be the militia and volunteers that are more you know, more likely to fall back and get out of there. So it makes sense to let the player pick the weaker troops. But we're going to make it a little bit spicier. The green die represents an elite unit. You always roll this no matter the casualties. The red die represent artillery. You roll 1 artillery if it's 30 casualties or less, and you roll 2 artillery if it's 40% casualties or more. So in this situation, like we said, CSA lost 60% of their army. You would then actually roll all of these dice, and then you roll it. So our elite, oh, oops, didn't mean to do that. Hold on, let's do this again. Let's do it again. So we roll it, and okay, not as good as a roll as last time. So we look at the green one. Remember, green is elite. It's a 2. That means he loses an elite unit. He must delete an elite unit. It's a bummer, but what can you do? Artillery, 1 needs to be replenished. The other one is fine because it's a 5 or 6. So remember, a unit must be replenished if it's a 3 or 4. So keep that in mind. So yeah, pretty cool, pretty straightforward, right? It just forces players to have to delete, you know, elite units and whatnot. But not a ton. It's not a ton. And then again, if we looked at this, he's got a couple 2s and 1s. Let's see, 2, 1. Here's another 1. Here's another 2. I think there's a little box you can deploy in these games that will like roll these and organize these for you, which is cool. We'll probably set that up. But in this roll, he lost 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 5 units again. And then how many needs to be replenished? 1, 2, 3 units need to be replenished. No, actually 4 units need to be replenished. These are fine because they're 5s and 6s. So yeah, I think that's a pretty cool system to do to keep up with casualties. Again, it's 2 die per 10%. So if you only lost 10% of your army, you roll 2 die with 1 green and 1 red. So that would be your. So let's say, you know, we fought in a battle and we had 10% casualties. Well, unfortunately, we lost an artillery in that. One of our elites needs to be replenished. We lost 1 infantry, and 1 infantry needs to be replenished. So it's not a huge deal. And this is not a perfect system by any means. There's a lot of luck to it, and it doesn't really represent what actually happened in the battlefield. But it's something that's simple, and it's something that won't be too complicated. Maybe we can come up with a better system later, but for now, I kind of like it. It's the anticipation of the roll, and it's exciting. Now, if you won the battle, so the rolls are a little bit different if you win the battle. So let's say Union, like in our little scenario, Union won the siege of Atlanta, but they also lost 60% of their army. Well, they would roll the same amount of dice, but the difference is, so let me just roll it. The difference is that it's not as harsh. So you would lose a unit only on 1s. So he would lose 1, 2. I guess he would just lose. Oh, wait. So Union would lose 3 units. And now 2 and 3 for the winning side is replenish. So instead of 2s being completely losing a unit, it's just replenish now. So 3s, actually pretty unlucky roll here, honestly, in terms of replenishment. But the good news, all right, here's another one. This one is 6. Okay. So the good news is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wow, 7 units need to be replenished. But the good news is he's on Atlanta, and he controls Atlanta, which I'll get to that in a second. Basically, cities, you have to go to a city to recruit troops and replenish your army. So keep that in mind. Let's see, what else city? These are fine. His artillery is fine. Unfortunately, he needs an elite that needs to replenish, and all these guys are fine. So at the end of the day, he has 3 completely abandon the army and 7, 8 units total that need to be replenished. That's a lot. So it's not, I mean, it's not as bad as losing your troops, because remember, replenishing troops costs less currency than buying new troops. So yeah, that's essentially how that would work. Pretty straightforward, right? I mean, pretty simple. A way to keep up with that kind of stuff, keep up with the casualties. And again, we'll have a spreadsheet kind of going over like what units were wiped out and what units need to be replenished so we can keep up with it. So that's how the battles are going to happen. Now, when you need to replenish units or replenish armies, excuse me, you have to be in a city, and then you have to spend your currency, which we're going to do currency with this. So let's just say CSA has 40. I don't think we have the perfect set of currency. Like, for example, I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. We're still trying to iron that out. What? Oh, cool. Can you roll like this? Oh, that's cool. Anyways, sorry. Oh, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. But there's a better system anyways. But let me just delete these. As I was saying, let's say CSA has 40 currency. It costs, let's say it costs like 3 currency to replenish a unit. This army needs 5 units to be replenished. Well, then it's going to cost 15 currency to replenish those units. And also, when you go to replenish your army, it counts as a turn. So you can't move, essentially. So let's say, you know, I go here with my army, and then it's my turn again. Well, then I will choose my turn to replenish. So we're like, okay, well, Apollo, you're an idiot and you suck at these battles. So unfortunately, you're going to take a bunch of currency away from us. So let's just say it costs like 20 to replenish my army. Then we'll have 20 left over. And then you would have to wait another turn to get fresh recruits, as in like new regiments. So let me make that clear. There's 2 phases. There's 1, the replenish phase, and 2, the recruitment phase. So if it comes back to me again, it's my turn again. I'll go, okay, well, it's my turn again. I replenish my weak troops, so they're back in the army with healthy numbers. But I still need to fill in the troops that left my army. If you want, you don't have to. You know, it's optional. Maybe you want to save money, so you're like, you know what, I'll just have a smaller army. So now I would have to wait another turn, okay, another phase, I should say, until I can get those recruits, and then I'll be good. After that, the next time it goes to me, then I can move out. So if you have a big costly battle, you'll be sitting in a city for a couple months, you know, or a couple phases until you can move out again. So that's essentially how that works. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We did have a system. Let me just load it in here really quick, but it's so cool. You can load in all these pieces and make your own game. But we did have a system where it was just going to get too complicated to keep up. But essentially the system was going to be where you have certain cities that produce certain units. So let's say Orlando over here, or Florida City, whatever it is, Gainesville, I don't know. They produce artillery. So let's say I'm over here and I need artillery. Basically, it would move like every phase and slowly get to you. But it would just get way too confusing because you'll have like a bunch of these going everywhere and you'd have to keep up with it. And it just yeet it out of here. So it just makes it simpler to have to recruit in a city. We're also not doing manpower. Maybe we can. I don't know. It's still, the manpower issue is still not set. We just, you know, obviously the Union has more manpower. But we want to try to make this as fair as possible. So, I mean, there's some historical elements to it, like the locations of things, but there's also some non-historical things like manpower. You know, we're just not going to worry about manpower. The manpower is basically your money, so to speak. You know, the more cities you have, the more money you have, and also the more troops you would have because you have more cities. So, yeah, that's how that works. Let's see, what else am I missing? I guess if you lose a battle, we already kind of talked about, you withdraw, you fall back, and then once both sides have played a battle, it's the end of a turn, then you re-roll. We talked about that. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. I mean, that's pretty much, we covered everything. You have your cards here. If your army gets like completely demolished to the point where you're like 95% of your army is just utterly destroyed, I believe what we're going to do is that you're going to have to spawn way in the back of friendly territory, basically rebuild your army from scratch. So it's going to be really expensive. You never, it's all about maintaining the troops you have and not getting too aggressive, because you never want to completely wipe out your army, because rebuilding troops, like, it's so much cheaper to replenish troops than to recruit new troops. And if your army gets wiped out, then it is done. It is over. Okay, so as I was saying that, I remembered a couple mechanics that I haven't explained. Another thing that we're gonna do is you can starve out cities. So say you have an army here, you can move this army, and with an army, this is technically, okay, this USA army is sieging Montgomery, so that means the city will be producing one less currency per turn. So you kind of want to remove this guy so you can have as much currency as possible. If you have two Union armies, you've completely surrounded it. The city is starving. It's producing no currency. So it's really smart to kind of do that. Now, when there's two armies surrounding it, CSA can still withdraw. You know, they could still withdraw out of there, avoid the fight, give up the city. But if there's three armies around the city, then this army cannot withdraw. They're stuck in here, and they basically will have to wait for a relief army to show up and help them out. And you can also kind of negotiate too with the players, like, hey, you know what? I will let you take the city. I will let you take this city. If you let my army out here, you know, without taking any casualties, I will fall back. You take the city without losing any casualties. You know, you can kind of negotiate, have some diplomacy, negotiation with the other side to, you know, get what you want, whatever. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And what's going to happen here, too, is, like, you're probably wondering, okay, well, what happens after another, you know, how many phases or turns is it going to take for this army to just starve out completely? Well, honestly, what's going to happen is that these Union armies are going to take turns fighting this CSA army. So it's not going to be pretty. Or they could just push them back, right? They could just win the siege battle, and this army just will get pushed back, and then they take it. So, but if the CSA hold the siege battle, then, you know, they're just going to keep getting attacked, and it's not going to be good. You know, an army cannot maintain getting attacked by three other armies. You're going to lose that one. So that's how that's going to work. What else is there? We do have a railroad system, and the way so let's talk about movement a little bit, because I think I forgot to do that. Movement, every army can move 4 spaces. They can't move at an angle, though. So that it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't go like this, you know, like from here to here. So you got to move either vertical or horizontally. And if there's a railroad, so there's a little railroad bonus, every time that you move to a space that has a railroad in it, so this would be 1, 2 spaces with railroads, 3 spaces with railroads, 4 spaces with railroads, you would then add 1 more move space per space you hit of the railroad. So at the most, if you hit every space here with a railroad in it, you would increase your movement by another 4, right? So for example, let's say there's an army here. It'd be like, okay, so he's moving 4 spaces, right? So it'd be 1, 2, hits a railroad, 3, 4 hits another railroad. That means he can now move another 2 spaces. So 1, 2, you know, something like that. So pretty straightforward, guys. Railroads help you move a little bit quicker. We thought about adding rivers and having rivers kind of slow down armies, but we didn't want to overcomplicate it. We're trying to keep it simple for now until the players have a really good understanding of it, and then we might throw in more complex rules to the game. So let's talk about battles here a little bit, because ACW battles are very epic, is one way to put it. They last a long time, and oftentimes the timer runs out. Well, if you guys ever played NTW3, they have a system where if you capture certain key victory points on the battlefield and you have more points than the enemy, you win. So that's what we're going to do for this game. And ACW also has that same mechanic. It's just a little bit different. So if you look here, I have a picture of a battlefield. You see these little points on the mini map. If your army is like, if the point is behind your front line, you control that point. So when the timer runs out and you basically look at the army placement, and that's how you take these points. There's a little bit more detail into it, which I'm just not going to explain. But essentially, if the point is behind your army and it's not cut off by the enemy, it's your points, and whoever has the most points wins. Because what happens in this game is that players often like to sit in corner camp or just sit on a hill. This makes it a little bit more dynamic, where they need to push up or fall back or defend or go for strategic locations on the battlefield. It makes it really fun and really interesting. Now, another way we're going to make battles very interesting is that, say we have two armies that meet in the open here. What's going to happen is that oftentimes armies would have like their scouts or their cav corps or something, you know, like their cav units would kind of meet first, and then set up a line and wait for the rest of the army to show up. So we're going to have a delayed core system. So let me show you how that works. Let's say that this is my army. I'm first corps. So when I engage this Union army, my first corps will be the first one in. And then my allies, second corps and third corps, they're going to have to roll. So let's say I go in first. You roll, and how many numbers it is on the die is how many minutes you have to wait. So first corps goes in first. Second corps will then move in after mine. And, oh, they got to wait 6 minutes until they can start moving up and joining the battle. Then on top of that 6 minutes, third corps would then roll, right? So third corps would have to wait until second corps to get in. And third corps rolled a 3, so that would be 6, 7, 8 minutes. So they would have to wait 8 minutes to join the battlefield. And then Union would do it too. The only time you wouldn't do this is during siege battles, because, I mean, both armies are sitting there sieging. You know, they're ready to go. This is more kind of simulating armies marching out and meeting each other by accident or whatever, and you know, having to get the rest of the army to show up. So I thought that would be cool and make the battles a little bit more dynamic and interesting, and your strategies would have to change depending on the map and the victory point locations and all that jazz. So the other thing I want to mention about battles is there is a withdrawal option. Say you want to conserve your numbers. Say, you know, this army's fighting, let's say CSA attacked Union, and Union's trying to hold off CSA during the battle, and they're like, you know what, guys, we're losing too much, and I'm more than okay letting this CSA army push us back towards our friendly lines or whatever, and I want to avoid taking many casualties. So the defenders, the ones who did not initiate the battle, can withdraw from the battle at any time, right? So but you know, there's going to be consequences. You know, there will be consequences. So if you withdraw from the battle, you can just fall back, right? And you're good. The army that initiates the battle, the attackers, the aggressor, can only withdraw after halfway through the battle. So pitch battles will be an hour long, and siege battles will be an hour and 30 minutes long, because they're a bit more like, you know, you're attacking a defensive position. They take a little longer. So if it's a pitch battle, after 30 minutes, the attackers can fall back. In a siege battle, it's 45 minutes when the aggressors can fall back. So that way, it's just kind of like, you know, if the attackers are like, you know what, I don't like this map, I'm just going to fall back. You know, it's like, nah, you can't do that. You've got to commit. You know, you've got to commit to the fight, at least half of it. So, and there's going to be a lot of honor system in this game. We're all friends here. It's not going to be super competitive. I mean, we're going to try to win and everything, but you know, at the end of the day, this probably game isn't perfect and completely fair, and some bullcrap situations are going to happen. Now, going back to withdrawing, if you would withdraw 2 times in a row, so let's say, you know, you withdraw, CSA comes over to you again, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to withdraw again, then you're going to have to take a penalty. And you're going to roll 2 die. And basically, it's the same thing as the casualty thing. You roll 2 die and it's like, oh, okay, well, I rolled 4s. That means 2 of my units need to be replenished now. Or actually, you know what? I'm sorry. It's only 1s and 2s. There's no replenishing. So if you roll and let's just say, okay, let's just come on, roll a 2. All right, let's just say we rolled a 1 or 2. Then they lose a unit from their army. It kind of represents like, oh my god, this general doesn't know what he's doing. We keep falling back. Why don't we engage him? This war there's no hope, and we're gonna disband. We're gonna desert the army. That's essentially what that's representing. So you can't withdraw whenever you want. You know, you gotta be smart about it. So that's how that works. These rules aren't perfect, and I'm sure when we play for the first time, we're going to have scenarios or situations that kind of break the rules, and we're going to have to fix them on the spot. So don't be surprised if you're watching the stream and we're like, oh, okay, this is a problem. We need to come up with a system that fixes that. So even though, because right now we're doing a test playthrough with some players, and just kind of ironing out the rules and everything and seeing how it works. But you know, even though the official playthrough is going to happen after that, it's still kind of a test playthrough until, like I said, we iron out every situation. So yeah, that's pretty much the rules, guys. Again, feel free to express any ideas you have. No promises on me using it though, just because I feel like we have a solid set of rules here, and you know, maybe I didn't do a good job explaining certain ones, and you know, I just want to make sure it makes sense to you guys. But yeah, I don't know when exactly we're streaming it. Probably like somewhere around a week from now or something. But even when this campaign ends, I would love to do this for other Total War games or other RTS games. You know, like Company of Heroes, do a World War II one, or you can do Age of Empires. You can do literally anything where you're playing a match and you're fighting over stuff. Like, it's a really cool thing, you know. It's really awesome, and it makes it so much more immersive when you're fighting a match and you're fighting over something, you know, whether it be a city or a little chip here or whatever. It's cool. It's really cool. So also, guys, one thing I forgot to mention, Eastern armies can go into the West, so keep that in mind. Yeah, so there you have it, guys. That is the board game. That's how that's gonna work. Let me know how you think about it. I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to get this started. So thank you guys so much for watching. Again, if you have any questions, write them down in the comments. And remember, if you want to be a part of this or something, you can do this yourself. Just get Tabletop Simulator. And you don't need every player to have this game. You can stream it through Discord, which is really convenient, and just kind of roll for other players. But Tabletop Simulator, I don't think it's too much. I think it's like $15 or something like that. But it's not like 60 bucks or anything like that. Again, I don't remember, so don't quote me on it. But yeah, it's going to be awesome. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time on the battlefield.